Nobody told you that growing up would mean feeling more alone, not lonelier because of what happened to you, but lonelier because of what you became. Some people spend years feeling like outsiders, not because they're alone, not because they're rejected, not because they don't have friends, but because no matter where they go, they never feel like they truly belong. Maybe you know that feeling. You're at a party, music is playing, people are laughing at something, and you're laughing too. But somewhere, behind that laugh, you're watching yourself from the outside, wondering why none of this feels real. And you go home that night, and you don't know how to explain what's wrong, because nothing was wrong, and that was exactly the problem. You can never explain exactly why. You just feel different. Different in the way you think, different in the way you see people, different in the way you experience life. And after enough years, that feeling turns into a question, a dangerous one. What's wrong with me? But what if that's the wrong question? What if nothing is wrong with you? What if you've misunderstood the feeling completely? Because the strange thing about people who feel different is that they usually spend their lives looking for a flaw that doesn't exist. And the reason is surprisingly simple. Most people never realize they're making a comparison they can never win. Let me explain. Every day, you experience yourself from the inside. You hear every doubt, every insecurity, every fear, every embarrassing memory, every moment of uncertainty. You know exactly how confused you are, how anxious you are, how lost you sometimes feel. Everyone else, you experience them from the outside. You don't hear their doubts. You don't feel their insecurities. You don't see their late-night overthinking. You only see the performance, the smile, the confidence, the certainty, the version they're willing to show the world. And without realizing it, you start comparing your inner reality to everyone else's outer image. The problem is, that's not a fair comparison. It's an illusion. Because the people who seem the most confident often have fears they never talk about. The people who seem the most connected often feel lonely. The people who seem like they belong everywhere often feel like they belong nowhere. You just don't get to see that part. And that's where the feeling begins. Not because you're different, because you're seeing incomplete information. But that's only half the story, because there is something else that makes certain people feel disconnected from the crowd. Awareness. The more aware you become, the harder it becomes to live the way everyone else does. You start noticing things, the tension in a conversation, the sadness behind someone's smile, the insecurity hidden inside confidence, the contradiction between what people say and what they actually feel. Someone tells you they're fine, and you nod, but you already know they're not. You can feel it in how they said it. Too quickly, too flat, and you carry that with you for the rest of the day. Even though they've already forgotten they said it, most people notice events. You notice patterns. And once you start seeing patterns, you can't stop. That's why some people spend hours thinking about conversations everyone else forgot. That's why some people replay moments in their head long after they're over. That's why some people feel exhausted in environments that seem normal to everyone else. Their minds aren't processing less. They're processing more. And at first, this feels like a gift because it helps you understand people. But eventually, it starts creating distance because the more deeply you see people, the harder it becomes to enjoy surface-level interactions. And that's where another contradiction appears. You understand people deeply, yet struggle to feel understood. You crave connection, yet pull away from shallow relationships. You want belonging, yet refuse to become someone else to achieve it. And that contradiction can make you feel broken. But it isn't brokenness. It's tension. The tension between who you are and what the world rewards. Because most people are willing to sacrifice a little of themselves to fit in. Some people aren't. Some people would rather be misunderstood for who they are than accepted for who they're not. And while that sounds admirable, it comes with a cost. Loneliness. Not because nobody likes you, not because nobody cares, but because depth can only be met by depth. And not everyone is ready for that. This is the hidden cost nobody talks about. Everyone talks about becoming more self-aware. Few people talk about what happens after. The friendships you outgrow, the environments that stop feeling right, the conversations that no longer satisfy you, the version of yourself you have to leave behind. Growth feels exciting in theory. In reality, it often feels like loss. And for a while, that loss feels like isolation. That's why so many people mistake growth for brokenness. They're not falling apart. They're outgrowing something. And those two experiences can feel surprisingly similar. But here's the truth that changes everything. Maybe the reason you've always felt different isn't because you're broken. Maybe it's because you've been comparing your private reality to everyone else's public performance. Maybe it's because you've spent years trying to fit into places you were only meant to pass through. Maybe it's because you've mistaken awareness for isolation. And maybe, just maybe, the thing you've been trying to fix about yourself was never the problem, because the goal was never to become more like everyone else. The goal was never to silence the parts of yourself that feel different. The goal was to understand them, to understand why you notice what others ignore, why you think the way you do, why you feel the way you do. Because the moment you stop asking, why am I different? You can finally start asking a better question. What can I see because I am? And the answer to that question might change the way you see yourself forever. You were never broken. You were just built for a deeper frequency, and not everyone can hear it.